the Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Royal Blue Podcast, which is a little more upbeat this week after a good Everton win at the weekend. I'm your host Adam Jones today, joined by Dave Prentice and Sam Carroll as we discuss Everton's 1-0 victory over Brighton at Goodison Park. Preno, we'll start with you. A little bit of a flat atmosphere at Goodison, to say the least, wasn't
it? That's an understatement. It was always going to be like that, to be honest, wasn't it? I think the fallout from Sunday, the previous Sunday, rumbled on. And I was quite interested in actually hearing the names being read out before the game, wondering what kind of reception the players would get. And it was muted, I think, is the most polite way of describing it. And I understand that, that the hurt runs deep after what happened at Anfield. And so they turned up, it was a full house, but they were basically saying, right, impress us, so show us what you can do. And started okay, so it was a decent enough performance. And as the players grew into it, so did the crowd, until Fabian Delph came on. And then, but no, there was it was a quiet atmosphere, and it was always going to be like that, to be honest. And I understand it, but it was very, very important that Everton got the result to try and. You're never going to erase what happened at Anfield. That'll stay in the memory banks forever. But just to try and, sort of put a little bit of distance between us and get 3 very, very important points. And there were a number of things that the crowd could enjoy during the game. There were some decent performances, a great goal. That was probably the high point of the game in terms of crowd noise, to be honest. But I get why it was quiet. I expect it to be different. As a week on Tuesday when we play Newcastle at home, I think it'll be different then. And then obviously at West Ham at the weekend, against David Moyes, one of his teams. I think it'll be a little bit better again. But it'll take.
You on the coaching staff for Moyes?
I know, no. Everyone will have seen you on Match of the Day.
Yeah,
giving them all your tips.
I was a bit disappointed actually. He sat next to me and we had a good chat during the first half about various issues. But then he went missing at half time. Went and sat somewhere else. So whether he was either thought he'd got everything he could out of me, or whether I was just boring him, I don't know. But yeah, he headed off for a different season. I think he was trying to make an early exit and sort of dart out. And where we were sat, it would have been more difficult for him to do that.
Whatever helps you sleep at night, Brennan.
But it was good. It was good to see him back at Goodison, or admittedly in a very, very quiet atmosphere.
Oh, on the atmosphere, Sam, it's quite hard to disagree with Preno, isn't it? It was always going to be a bit of a flat, sort of subdued atmosphere. But as Preno mentioned, 3 points was all that mattered, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was a few kind of people saying before the game, weren't there, about play Gordon, play Gibson, play Beningame, play the under-11s. But it was an important game for where we was in the table. Do you know what I mean? And certainly with the standard of the Premier League this season, which apart from not even Man City and Liverpool anymore, is it? It's just Liverpool. No one else has really been very consistent this season. So there's still a chance that if you put together a string of 3-4 wins from our position at the moment, then you can be knocking on the door of 5th and 6th. As crazy as that is to say, so it was a massive game. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't still wasn't quite the perfect performance overall, I don't think, but it got the win. 3 wins out of 4 for Ancelotti now, and hopefully goes a little way to kind of paying back the supporters for the embarrassment of the week before. So hopefully now we can put a little bit of a run together, but there's definitely signs there, and it was an important game.
Can we just nail a rumour as well? I got a few texts and messages on Saturday night about the possibility of that Liverpool could clinch the league title at Goodison Park. Utter nonsense, they can't. The prospect worried me so much. I actually looked at the fixtures remaining, and I think it's March the 14th. It'll be changed for television probably to the following day, maybe. But there are still 8 Premier League fixtures after that, which is 24 points to play for. Their lead is only 15, 16 points at the moment, so they can't clinch it at Goodison Park regardless of what happens.
Unless City
implodes spectacularly.
Drop with even more points.
But don't talk like that.
Well, all I'm saying is it is possible.
City looked in fine fettle on Sunday. They're not going to drop many points, I think, so between now and the end of the season. So then again, so the prospect of that happening, maybe that is what Everton would need to motivate them and do what we did all those years ago when Wayne Clark stopped them breaking Leeds' record back in 1988. You've got to cling on to these historical things at the moment where derbies are concerned. But at the moment, no. They can't clinch it at Goodison, so don't worry about that.
Well, another thing you wanted to get off your chest, VAR.
Oh,
now,
God.
Of course, we started this game with another pretty interesting VAR incident. Theo Walcott played in behind, I think inside the first 5 minutes of the game. looked to be tugged on the shoulder by Lewis Dunk, quite admirably, I think, stayed on his feet. Was obviously unbalanced when he had his shot, and it was saved by Matt Ryan. No penalty given, went to VAR, no penalty given. What's your thoughts, Brian?
My thoughts are that the VAR bottled it on this occasion because it was so early in the game, and he thought Michael Oliver was the guy who was referee. I rate it as one of the better ones in the Premier League, despite missing that handball at Millwall last season, which got Everton knocked out of the FA Cup. But I genuinely think he's one of the better referees out there. So, we saw what happened, and like you say, admirable of Theo Walcott to stay on his feet, but clearly was impeded, was clearly knocked off balance. He was falling as he got his shot off. His balance was completely, sort of disorientated by Lewis Dunk's, deliberate pullback. So as soon as it goes to the VAR, you're expecting a penalty. You're thinking, well, yeah, I can't think of any other decision that they're going to give. And it really wound me up, like the little smirk on David Coote's face, as if to say, told you I was right all along. You weren't, you were wrong. He was clearly impeded. And, it wasn't just me saying that. Lots of other, sort of pundits, including Danny Murphy on Match of the Day, Chris Kamara the following day on Sky Sports, TalkSport the following day. Every medium I've listened to, thought that the referee got it wrong. And to me, all I can think of, I mean, you actually emailed the Premier League, didn't you, and said, look, can you give us an explanation? Fair play to them, they did. And their explanation was that Michael Oliver didn't feel there was sufficient contact. Utter nonsense, so clearly there was contact enough to impede him from getting his shot off properly. And I just genuinely think that he thought, well, okay, if I give this as a penalty, you're going to have to send Lewis Dunk off because it's denying a goal-scoring opportunity, and it's 5 minutes into the game. I just genuinely think that all went through their head, and, it had to be an absolute assault for them to decide that it was not going to be a penalty. If that had happened, sort of 10 yards outside the penalty area, it's a free kick absolutely nailed on. So that really, really wound me up. I mean, they talk about refereeing decisions evening themselves out over the season, and that includes VAR decisions, and they're not. So we've had a fair number now. I think Tottenham at home was possibly the only one that went in our favour when the penalty possibly against Son wasn't given, and even that was like fairly grey area. But the one down at Brighton, was cost us the game, and the Premier League subsequently admitted they made a mistake in that one. It was incorrect call. It was an incorrect call on Saturday as well. Fortunately, it didn't matter because we came back and won the game ultimately anyway. But VAR just drives me to distraction. You sound like a bit of a dinosaur complaining about it because I understand why it was introduced. So video technology we called for, but it's not being employed correctly. Yeah. So you've got one guy on the pitch who's making a subjective decision, and you've got another guy elsewhere making a subjective decision, and in that case on Saturday they both got it wrong, I think.
Well, I mean, you weren't there on Saturday, Sam, but you were there for the reverse fixture in Brighton when obviously we had that one Keane on Armstrong, was it? That penalty was given. Like, what do you do to solve this sort of? It seems that every week, almost every single game, we're having these sort of VAR problems. It's all anybody seems to be talking about at the minute. Like, how do you solve it?
I'd honestly just sack it off now,
Yeah.
I'm feeling that way myself, I hate it. It does, it's ruining my
enjoyment
of the game.
If you can get that down to a thing where it's definitely 100% right, then whether we like it or not, a fingertip is offside, isn't it? I'm not really that bothered.
They've got to change that. There's got to be daylight.
Maybe change the rule so it's more clear, but I just think the other one is we've had this sport now for hundreds of years and we didn't need it and it came in, and I just think, and like I even felt, I think the ultimate example for me this season is when I watched the replay of that West Ham equaliser at Sheffield United, and like the scenes behind the goal, and you had Moyes run down the touchline. It's just killing footy, isn't it? This is no. At the end of the day, I think it's still a spectator sport, and what to get, I don't know. It's just so hard because I know then you could say, well, maybe it was a right decision, but you're just going from a subjective decision on the pitch to a subjective decision with a few more cameras to kind of inform your decision. But some of these decisions, like that Everton one at Brighton, like that West Ham one, such a grey area, it's so tight that I don't even think the people making the decisions are probably 100% on what the right and wrong answer is, and it doesn't seem like the Premier League are going to get rid of it fully, but I just think it is just absolutely ruining matches, and you don't realise how many, probably if you went back now in time, how many crucial goals down the years have probably started with a man offside, like the one we seen at Liverpool the other day, or had an handball earlier on in the build-up that would have just changed the course of football history, and it's just wrong, isn't it? I just think, play the game, offsides, let's make them clear. We have the technology to deal with that. We've got goal line technology. Anything that you can kind of define and dot the T's and cross the, or dot the T,
Dot the
Dot the
T's,
I's
yeah.
and cross the...
We know what you're trying to say.
Whatever. Then that's fine. But for these decisions, I just think it's absolutely rude.
They're taking so long to actually decide now, and the big problem is as well, you don't know when a decision has gone to VAR or not. I mean, there was the one shortly after the World Cup on a handball where a shot, was into somebody's body, and I still don't know whether it hit his hand or not.
It hit his chest.
And you don't know if it was going to be looked at by
replays.
VAR or not. Now, I think the way to overcome that is do what we've been calling for a long time, for the referee on the pitch to go over and look at a pitch side monitor if he thinks there's been a clear and obvious problem. And, I know you're going to get players like, telling him to go and look at things frequently, but it's up to him to have the strength of character to decide when he does and when he doesn't. That wasn't happening because we're told it took too long. But we're taking, Aubameyang at the weekend, it took 2.5 minutes to decide he was going to break that fella's leg. And, so surely you can look at that quicker than that. And if you can't, fine, let the referee go and look at the pitch side monitor and take a couple of minutes. And at least people in the stadium then know what's happening. So, I'm sat there on Saturday thinking, are VAR looking at that or not? I don't know. Because, you're waiting for the screen to go on in the corner and sometimes it doesn't. At least if the referee stops play and goes and looks at a pitch side monitor, you know what's happening. And that's like a small step in the right direction. But the whole system is just, I don't like to use foul language, but it's bollocks, utter bollocks. And it's really, really, sort of frustrating and definitely spoiling the enjoyment. Celebrations are being... interrupted now. People are starting to celebrate and thinking, whoa, hang on, has it been given or not? And that's just, it's spoiling people's enjoyment of the game. Horrible.
Well, thankfully it didn't spoil the result of the game this weekend, and that's thanks in no small part to Richarlison, who was the difference again, scored the winning goal. Sam, how good is he?
Yeah, I think he's Everton's talisman now, isn't he? I think I said that a few months back. I think it was actually after that Brighton away game and the performance he put in. He can play up front, he plays on the right, he plays on the left, and still pretty much every week looks like Everton's best player. And I think people forget how young he is, and people forget the pressure he was under when Everton paid such a big fee for a player who didn't score in the second half of his first season in England. After Marco Silva got sacked, and once again this season he's dealt with the pressure of his kind of mentor who brought him to the Premier League being sacked again, and he's responded well to it. But I just think he's massively underrated, Richarlison. I think there was some unfair criticism of him early in the season for kind of going down too easily, but he is still a young lad, and he's from Brazil, and at the end of the day I still think whatever you say about him going down, he's still a tough lad. He takes the knocks and he keeps going, he keeps wanting the ball, he keeps wanting to take people on. He's brave, he's showing now that he's scoring goals consistently, and that goal against Brighton, what a goal that is. If another player in the Premier League, in your Man Cities or your Liverpools had scored that, then people would have been sharing that far and wide. I just think it's such a good goal. It reminds me of the one against Wolves on his debut last season, where he just makes stuff like that look so easy. That's hard to do, isn't it? It's hard to have that close control and then the kind of clarity of mind to just kind of curl it kind of so coolly into that bottom corner. I think Everton and Carlo Ancelotti have got to build our team, our new team, hopefully around Richarlison, because he's looking to me like he could genuinely be a 15-20 goal a season Premier League striker, and at the same time so is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So the two of them I think have really shown, and credit to Duncan Ferguson for kind of initiating it in the first place, but to put them two together, I think they kind of play off each other quite well. I think they both have the kind of individual strengths and weaknesses that work quite well with each other, and it's kind of showing now, isn't it, that maybe I don't know why Silva never really tried that towards the back end of his reign. Let's get someone else up there with Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison and try and kind of put a bit more pressure on people, because the Richarlison, he just runs all day, doesn't he? He must be, when he comes off the pitch, just must be absolutely knackered. And my only fear is if he carries on playing the way he is until the end of the season, then there would be certainly question marks around teams probably wanting to sign him.
Yeah, I think he's our most important outfield player at the moment, so quite comfortably. But a team that doesn't create that many chances or score that many goals, and he's now joint top scorer with Calvert-Lewin, and he scores goals out of nothing, really.
Yeah.
He's very good at getting on the end of crosses and finding space and arriving late in the box. But the variety of goals he scores is really impressive, and that was basically constructed out of very little. So that goal at the weekend, okay, it was a decent ball in. From Dean, I think it was, but just to create the space and to get past the defender and bend it in, absolutely top quality. And yeah, he's he's not getting much of a profile at the moment, which I'm quite pleased about, because you don't want, so other clubs in Europe to be, sort of coveting him, because he is so important to Everton. I mean, obviously, as Ancelotti's reign progresses, he will bring in different players, and he'll presumably add to our striking options, which will, take a little bit of the pressure off Richarlison. But at the moment, he's carrying that burden, sort of goal scoring, him and Calvert-Lewin, pretty much single-handed, and he's rising to that challenge. Yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, echo entirely what you say about his toughness. He's not going to ground anywhere near as often as he used to be fair. I mean, that was a criticism that was warranted, and it happened a little bit at the weekend. He was down the near touchline for a little while, but it's happening less and less during games. And he clearly was injured, so clearly took a whack because he was like running quite gingerly for a while afterwards. But saw the game out, and very, very important footballer. And I think the fact that we're now getting to that period now where I think there's only the Newcastle midweek game, then we have literally weeks between matches, obviously because of the FA Cup, even so bigger gaps than we'd like. So that freshness is going to be sort of retained. So as long as he stays injury free, he's got every chance of finishing top scorer this season.
I think the other thing that people forget is that he's 22.
Yeah.
He's played he's played 2 full seasons in the Premier League, and under quite odd circumstances of he burst onto the scene with Watford, then Silva got sacked and he didn't score, then Everton paid this wild amount for him, and then he done well again and kind of silenced those critics. But I think he almost seemed like a player that from the outside kind of media who they wanted to fail just because Everton had paid such a big fee for such a for a foreign talent kind of thing, when people probably thought that we could have looked elsewhere. But at the end of the day, there are still rough edges to his game that need ironing out. But what 22-year-old doesn't? Unless you're a player of kind of like Kylian Mbappe quality, or like what Messi or Ronaldo were when they were first coming through. This is a high end player. That I think would still get into any other Premier League team at the moment, bar probably Manchester City and Liverpool. So that tells you in itself what a player he is.
He's playing for Brazil.
He's playing.
I know we sometimes give Brazil a little bit, some more respect than they deserve because of the, their history. But Brazil is still a top, sort of world nation, and he's playing for their first team, quite regularly.
And he's not, he's by no means fluent in his English quite yet, but he is seemingly working hard on that and trying to get better. And that'll probably help once he gets into that. But he seems to be a character that fits into the dressing room. I like that he's kind of. He certainly on the pitch, he's got a kind of spiky attitude, hasn't he? He's not scared of no one. He's not afraid to get stuck in. He's not a player that you could ever say, well, Richarlison didn't track back there. You see him sometimes, probably sometimes to his own detriment, but he's putting tackles in on the edge of his own box and running back and defending his own halfway line, which is, something that Everton fans can always get behind. And, I do think there was a point this season where it was almost frustrating, really, to see how underappreciated he was, but I think, as you're saying, Preno, he is definitely Everton's most important outfield player, and I think he'll be a player that, probably in the summer when Carlo Ancelotti and Marcel Brand sit down, that I don't think there'll be many faces on that table that Carlo will be saying, okay, 100% want him here next season, but he'll certainly be one of them.
We actually heard an airing of the chance at the weekend as well. He only cost 50 million.
Yeah.
I've not heard it for a while. And, he has had a little dip, I suppose, over the Christmas period when those, games were coming thick and fast, and he was playing virtually every minute of every one of them. But it was good to hear it at the weekend because he deserved, that acknowledgement because his performance was so good. Topped by the goal, but he could have had another one as well, second half, where, great run, so loads of pace, loads of strength. Ultimately, it was just a great challenge in the end, so that prevented him getting the second goal. So, fair play, just, really, really important player.
I think what's interesting to me is that both of you refer to him as a striker there. And he's been playing centrally for the last month, but I think, even since he first came to Everton, there's been a lot of debate over, what his best position is. Are we finally seeing now why he's always thought of himself as a central striker?
I think so, yeah. It was quite a good decision to actually play him off the striker from Duncan Ferguson took. He's been all over the place, hasn't he? Off the left, off the right. So playing very, very well in those positions. But he just looks like more of a threat, more of a goal threat, so playing where he is. And it gives him that little bit more freedom. Yeah. I mean, he's not absolving himself of any defensive discipline because he is tracking back, but he's just he's getting into the box a lot more. And as we've seen, he's a very, very good finisher. So, yeah, I think that probably is his best position. And, Carlo Ancelotti does like a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1, whatever it is, so we're using at the moment. And so, yeah, I think, so a prolonged period in that position is good for him. Whether it's good for the rest of the team then remains to be seen, because there's the old Gylfi Sigurdsson question, which we've asked so many times. He's a number 10 and he's currently playing central midfield, and I thought he was okay on Saturday. I thought he had a better performance.
Improved.
Obviously he had to improve on what he produced at Anfield.
Yeah, couldn't really be much worse.
But I thought he was good, but whether he will ever be a proper central midfielder, I doubt very much. So whether we'll bring in players in that position, whether so Gomez and Gabamin, so obviously it's a long time before we see Gomez play again, but Gabamin, maybe that will give Carlo Ancelotti a question then, to answer.
I think the thing for Richarlison as well is that Everton, a 4-4-2 for Everton and for Ancelotti probably isn't the Mike Bassett kind of Sir Alf Ramsey style, not to compare them to, 4-4-2, that you think of. Is it, it's always going to be quite a fluid 4-4-2, and I think maybe Richarlison, quite suits being the second striker in that. If Calvert-Lewin is your traditional centre forward, for Richarlison to be able to kind of go where he wants, really, he can drop in behind, he can partner him, he can go left, he can go right, he can get in between the lines, and I think that's probably what he'd be kind of best at doing, because then you do know that he won't be a kind of second striker then that will just stand hand and hips on the halfway line, and he'll work back for the team and keep that shape then defensively. But on Sigurdsson, not too sure if he's burned too many bridges now with some performances. I don't even know if it's an attitude thing or maybe lost a yard of pace in the last year or so.
His attitude's top class always, I think. He always does, sort of put a shift in.
Yeah.
But it's just he hasn't played well this season. He's just
maybe that's rough. Maybe that is the crux of the thing, isn't it? I just sometimes with him and Schneiderlin, I just don't know if I look at them and think he is up for it. He's up for the scrap.
I certainly wouldn't put them both in the same bracket. I think they're very different characters at play there. Don't want to get too critical of Morgan Schneiderlin, but I think Gylfi Sigurdsson's a different animal altogether.
Do you maybe think that Gylfi Sigurdsson is the one who's missing Idrissa Gana Gueye more than anyone else?
Totally, yeah.
Possibly, and that could be something that we haven't really kind of considered, isn't it? That not just the Idrissa's effect on the team, but on other players in particular. You probably did know if you were Sigurdsson last season in that 4-2-3-1, Ghana's got your back kind of thing to go and win the ball back and have that little bit more freedom. But yeah, as Prentice says, sometimes we are quick to point fingers at people, especially when we're not winning and we're losing important games, and maybe it is just deep down that Sigurdsson just hasn't played well this season. The only problem for Gylfi is that it's all kind of coming together in a perfect storm of he's not playing well. Does he have a position in the 4-4-2? Probably not. At the end of this season, he's only got 1 year left on his contract, or 2 years left on his contract. A high wage player who we bought for a lot of money. Do we try and kind of cut our losses with him at the end of the season? I'd probably think that if the right offer came in, then it would probably have to be that way.
It'd be interesting to see if that was the case, what kind of clubs would come in for him, though, because going to take a huge loss.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, is he 30 now? Is he?
29, 30?
He's around that age, so there's going to be no sell-on value for whoever takes him. His quality, so I like his quality. His dead balls were as good as ever at the weekend. His passing was better, his work rate was decent. There was, a couple of moments there he put in decent, tackles, which you don't normally expect from him. So one of which, did it create a good chance? Is it the disallowed goal? It actually slide tackle on the far side that he won, that I think ultimately resulted in the goal that was disallowed. So he played an important part in the game, but we're not seeing the best of him as a number 6 or number 8, whoever it is he's playing at the moment. But that's the way Carlo Ancelotti wants to play, so you're not going to build a team around him.
It's just so frustrating, isn't it? I think if he does if his Everton career did come to a close in this summer, some of the goals he's scored are some of the best Everton goals in modern times, and sometimes you forget about them, don't you? I mean, that one at Leicester always stands out, but then even this season, he made that one against West Ham look easy, made that one against Liverpool look easy. You know, I think there was one against
Man United last season.
Man United, Swansea when he curled it in.
Yeah.
You know,
having missed the penalty.
Yeah, important goal there.
Nearly cost me my first goal, scored a bet, and then come up with one straight afterwards.
So, you know, he obviously is a man who has so much quality, but we just probably haven't seen it quite as much as we would have liked it, and it will be really interesting to see, you know, if Jabaman comes back and kind of gets into the swing of the Premier League, if Gomez comes back and plays to the level that we saw at times last season, and maybe we sign another midfielder or Fabian Delph, you know, kind of gets into it a little bit more, then it would be interesting to see where his position in the team is.
I think it would be quite remiss of us to not talk about Bernard as well, after his performance at the weekend. What did you make of it, Prentice?
He was excellent. Again, a player I like a lot. He brings that little bit of creativity that, you know, we're not massively blessed within the squad. Makes things happen just with his quick feet, with his brain, with his ability to, you know, sort of pick a pass and beat a player as well, which you know, sort of not many players can do. And bizarrely, I thought the game changed a little bit at the weekend when he came off. And I know Carlo's substitutions caused a bit of debate, you know, so certainly on social media, because to me at the time I was a little bit surprised, you know, by the players that were replaced every single time. I'm thinking, well, why has he done that? And, you know, why has he done that? I mean, Bernard came off at a time when he was playing really well and influencing the game. But I accept that, you know, he was probably tiring, and, you know, you don't want to run the risk of him picking up another injury by, you know, sort of overplaying him. So, okay, I sort of get that. But then there seemed to be like a little reshuffle that was employed every single time he made a switch. When Coleman came on, you know, so, you know, we had to, you know, to push Sidibe further forward, and then Yerry Mina came on, and I'm thinking, okay, well, Glenn Murray's just come on, you know, he's obviously trying to combat that height that he's got in the area, but it enforced like another reshuffle with, you know, so players moving across the back four, which worries you a little bit. But equally, even though that seemed to invite Brighton onto us, and they had like a 10 or 15 minute spell where they were never like overly threatening, but they had moments. We got the result, so you can't really criticise a manager's changes if the end result is the correct one. And he did, and, you know, he seemed quite relaxed and so quite, you know, laid back about it afterwards. You know, so everything he did seemed to work. So, yeah, okay, you know, so probably I'm wrong for questioning his decisions, but it made me think. I was puzzled. I just couldn't quite work out why he was doing it. But to get back to the initial question, yeah, Bernard influenced the game significantly, and if we can keep him fit and we can keep him playing, great, you know, so he's a big bonus for us.
Keeping him fit's one thing though, but his consistency is under question, I'd say. Like, his goals and assists numbers aren't exactly fantastic, are they?
No, and that's the thing, isn't it? I think he's admitted it himself, but that obviously needs to improve if he wants to be a regular for Everton in the Premier League. You know, it was exciting, wasn't it? His first few weeks after we signed him, and he made a few cameos, and I think he set up that Richarlison goal against Leicester, and it kind of felt like we'd found a real kind of Brazilian magician to play on our wing, but it hasn't always kind of worked out like that. I don't think he's even one that you can always kind of... I don't think I've ever seen him have an absolute shocker by any means. You know, he's never a player where I'd be like... You see many people even saying, you know, Bernard was woeful there. He is just sometimes a little bit meh, isn't he? A little bit kind of didn't really affect the game in any way, you know, and obviously a player of his stature, you know, it is probably hard in every game to kind of take the game to the team, but I think, you know, this weekend is the perfect example. You know, if he can do it like that, you know, he's got to be doing it 8-9 weeks out of 10 if he wants to be a part of this team, and I'm sure he does want to be a part of this team with a manager like Carlo Ancelotti.
And at West Ham last season was probably one of his best performances, wasn't it? Where, you know, he scored the goal and made things happen. You know, so players sometimes do react to certain arenas. They just seem to feel more comfortable in certain places and feel better at them. Hopefully, you know, so whatever it's called, the London Stadium, you know, will be one of those, and we'll see him turn it on again at the weekend. He's kind of
got qualities that nobody else in the Everton squad really has, doesn't he? Like that sort of close control, quick feet. Wouldn't say he's exactly rapid down the wing, but his partnership with Luca Dean was on full display again at the weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's got a brain, you know, so he sees things that other players don't, and, you know, he does chisel out, you know, so openings, unexpected openings. It's so difficult now in the Premier League, you know, so to carve out openings. You wouldn't think so watching Man City play yesterday, but generally, you know, it is difficult to create goals, and that's why players like Richarlison, players like Bernard, you know, so no coincidence that they're both Brazilian internationals, are very, very important to Everton, because they can do that. they can make things happen. Otherwise, you're just relying on the quality of delivery from the flanks and to create openings. And Sidibe is great at that, so his delivery from the flanks is very, very good. Lucas Dean's been a little bit up and down this season. Generally, it was very, very good, and he had that great, sort of record, didn't he, of like some more chances created than any, sort of fullback in Europe apart from the other one across the park. But we haven't seen it quite as much over the last couple of months. He has had injury issues, of course, himself. He's not being 100% fit, but you're relying on them. So if you've got players like Richarlison and Bernard at it, it takes the pressure off them a little bit. So you're creating up openings and all over the pitch rather than just from one particular outlet. And very, very important to us. And so long may you continue. Mm-hmm. That's not wood, is it? Never mind.
I wouldn't have a clue. But I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you, lads, for joining me. We'll be back later in the week, not only to preview Everton's game against West Ham, but to review Everton's general meeting, which is taking place, as of recording tomorrow, Tuesday evening. Me and Phil will be down at that, providing live updates, which you can follow on the liverpoolecho.com. .co.uk. Sorry. You can rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, or Acast, all your podcast providers. And don't forget, you can join our Facebook group as well, Royal Blue Podcasts on Facebook, to join in the discussion for yourselves. Thank you for listening to the Royal Blue Podcast.
The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.